Today we'll discuss setting up your apiary for success. We'll dig into selecting a location as you plan your apiary, and we'll consider the location, hive stands, as well as some additional features you may want to include as you set up your apiary. Let's start by considering several factors as we discuss an ideal location for your hives. We'll discuss sunlight, wind, water, neighbors, functionality, and accessibility. Don't stress too much about this. You can always change your apiary setup. However, if you make a smart decision up front, this can help you avoid a lot of unnecessary work. Sunlight is part of the great debate for where to set up your apiary. The benefit to full sun is that wax moths and hive beetles don't handle the heat as well as honeybees do, so full sun can help reduce the threat of these types of pests. But working bees in the heat of the summer can be tough in full sun, so you may need to keep that in mind if you're sensitive to sun or heat, or if you have a lot of bees to work. We really love to keep our bees along a tree line where they get some shady time, but also still receive quite a bit of direct sun for a good portion of the day. Avoiding northern wind exposure for cold fronts can really help the bees stay warmer in situations where cool winds can blow straight into their hive. Bees are really great at thermoregulation within the hive, but a cold wind blowing into the entrance can certainly make it harder for them to keep warm in their cluster. In all reality, the bees will use propolis, or you may think of it as bee glue, to close up their entrance, so that this is a lower priority on the grand scheme of selecting a hive location. But it's simple, typically, to turn a hive a little bit away from that northern wind exposure. There are a few considerations in regards to water. The most obvious is that you want to make sure you keep your bees clear of flood areas. Raising your beehives above flood areas or keeping them out of flood areas entirely is a must so that you can keep your bees safe. If you have wet or moist soil in your area, then you may want to think about the fact that your hive stand legs can sink into the ground, and you may require pavers to help spread out the surface area of weight for those hives, especially as they get bigger. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we dig into hive stands a little later in this talk. You'll also want to make sure that your bees have easy access to water. So bees use water for hydration but also for temperature control in the hotter months, almost like a swamp cooler. So it's important that they have access to water. They love pond water or dirty water filled with minerals, so it really doesn't have to be anything ultra fancy. It just needs to be a source that they can get to pretty easily. We suggest using it as an excuse to install a relaxing water feature in your yard. Being a good neighbor is really important as a beekeeper. While most neighbors seem to love to have bees buzzing around the neighborhood, if you're in an urban area or choose to keep your bees closer to a property line, you're going to have a few more things you'll need to consider as you set up your apiary. Some neighborhoods and municipalities have restrictions that dictate how far from the property line you'll need to keep your bees, so be sure you follow rules in your area in addition to just best practices. The flight path of bees can be important to consider when keeping bees closer to structures, gardens, or commonly used areas. So you can construct or grow a barrier to force the bees to fly up instead of out, which can really help in smaller yards or urban areas to get the bees up and over people's heads and make the space more enjoyable. The biggest risk for bees in an urban area or near property lines is that they can be agitated by noisy machinery like lawnmowers and tractors. So making sure that your bees are kept away from areas that require regular mowing can make your life easier. It's just another reason to keep off the property lines when your neighbor may run a lawnmower near the bees. Keeping smaller colonies can help in these situations, as smaller colonies tend to be calmer and less aggressive. And then, of course, monitoring bee behavior and looking for consistently aggressive traits that you can go in and fix by installing a new queen or something along those lines can help to mitigate some of the other risks. Our best advice is just be friendly with your neighbors, offer them honey, and let them know that you have bees. In our experience, an open conversation and collaboration is a better approach for keeping your neighbors and your bees safe, of course, because it's possible they could spray pesticides along the fence line or things like that. So just having these conversations is super helpful. When deciding on a hive location, while all of these considerations can make a difference, it's also worth considering what's going to make it easier for you to take good care of the bees. Feral colonies live in just about anything, so this course is mainly to help you understand the pros and cons so that you can select the best place for you, but also know what challenges you or your bees may face based on that selection or location that you choose. You can always adjust management practices and make sure that you have the ability to access the hives. So it's just important that you're comfortable working in the selected location. Selecting a hive setup is the next step. So for top bar hives, they're typically designed with the stand already, or you can construct one to your height preferences. But for Langstroth hives, we're going to go ahead and go over 3 main options to decide from. The first is pre-made manufactured hive stands. These are often made from metal. They often have ant traps that you can refill with mineral oil to keep ants from climbing onto the legs. And although these get pretty pricey, they're also really nice. So depending on your budget, this may be a good option, and also depending on how many hives you have. The second option is to build your own, and this can be a really great way if you've got multiple hives, and also if you just want to control the aesthetics a little bit, because there are just a ton of options available. You can do a quick Google search. I'm not even going to go over the number of options, but you can do a combination of cinder blocks, pavers, and wood to really make some beautiful hive stands to set your bees on. And this can keep them off the ground a little more as well. Now, the third option is worth considering if you plan on growing your apiary to be really large, or if you're looking to move hives from one property to another. You may want to do yourself a favor up front and go ahead and start with pallets, because retrofitting your operation later so that you can migrate your bees to different areas or to growers and farmers, it can be a little cumbersome and a waste of materials and money. So while pallets aren't necessary or ideal for a small scale beekeeper, it can be a really good idea to go ahead and get started with pallets if you're planning on getting into this profession. If your bees don't have access to water on your property, you'll need to make some. This can be as simple as a bird bath, although keep in mind the water will evaporate very quickly in high heat. So another option is a small water feature or pond made out of a trough, or you could set up a pump water system that's set up similar to those cat waterers with the submersible pump, 5-gallon buckets, some tubes and rocks. You can get creative, and remember, whatever you choose, you'll have to refill. So sometimes bigger is better in this case. Installing a flight barrier can be as simple as a fence wall or even facing your hives in towards your home. But it could also be something more attractive like a trellis or hedge that really just forces the bees to fly up and away from their hive instead of out and away from the hive. And this really is just to keep the bees from flying into people as they're walking by. It's important that as you set up your apiary, you have your equipment ready and your apiary location selected and set up prior to picking up your bees. That's it for our apiary setup class. So we hope this helps you plan for your apiary and prepare for the arrival of your bees. As always, if you have questions, just let us know. We're happy to help. You can find us at Prime Bees across our social channels. And until next time, thanks for watching.